7 things you should never say to someone close. Listen to avoid hurting your loved ones. Number 1. You couldn't even do that? The most hurtful words often come from those closest to us. In daily conversations, especially with those we're close to. Friends, colleagues, siblings, even lovers or spouses. There's a phrase that seems harmless at first, but cuts deeply into a person's self-esteem like an invisible blade. You couldn't even do that? At first glance, it sounds like just a frustrated remark, a moment of disappointment, a slip of irritation when someone messes up, delays things, or falls short of expectations. But for the person hearing it, it carries much heavier meaning. You just dismissed their abilities. You mocked the effort they might have poured their heart into. You turned a simple mistake into a personal humiliation. When words become emotional punishment, picture this. A close friend of yours just failed a small project. They come to you, eyes full of regret. "I'm so sorry. I messed it up." And you respond, "Seriously? You couldn't even get that right?" That moment will stay with them forever. Not because you yelled, not because you cursed, but because you didn't believe in them. And worse, you made them feel small. I was once the one who said it. I admit, I've been that person. A new coworker, clumsy and nervous, messed up a very simple task. Frustrated, I snapped, "This is so easy. How could you get it wrong?" I didn't think much of it at the time. What I didn't know. That night, she cried, and a few days later, she quit. I only found out through someone else, and I was shaken. One careless sentence of mine had pushed someone to walk away from a place they hadn't even had the chance to grow into yet. You never know how hard someone is trying. What you see as so easy could be a huge mountain to someone else. What you call no big deal might be the breaking point for someone barely holding it together. You don't see what's behind their actions. Maybe they're under crushing financial pressure. Maybe they didn't sleep last night because a parent is sick. Maybe they suffer from anxiety, terrified of making mistakes. And a sentence like, "You couldn't even do that," might be the final push toward the edge. So what can you say instead? Instead of, "How could you mess this up?" Try. "It's okay, let me show you again. This part is tricky at first." Or, "I made the same mistake when I started. Next time, you'll nail it." These don't take away your authority. They don't make you seem soft. In fact, they do the opposite. They earn you respect. In the end, a gentle reminder for you and me. In a world where everyone is just trying to survive each day, the last thing someone needs is to feel useless. Your words, especially when you're someone familiar, carry tremendous weight. They can lift someone up, or push them into the pit of shame and self-doubt. And maybe years later, they'll forget what you did, what you gave them. But they'll never forget how your words made them feel. Yes, see, too. I told you so. You shouldn't have done it your way. When ego speaks louder than empathy. In close relationships, whether it's friendship, co-workers, or family, it's common to see others choose to do things differently from the way we suggested. And when their plans fail, our reflex is often to say, "I told you so. Didn't I say not to do it that way?" It may sound like a justified warning, but in truth, it's a form of blame, of rubbing it in, and it strikes right at the other person's pride. When good intentions are overshadowed by arrogance, you might have truly wanted to help. You may have foreseen the outcome. But when someone fails and you emphasize, "I warned you," your initial support gets buried beneath a tone of superiority. You're telling them you were right, they were wrong. You're turning the relationship into a battlefield of egos. You're placing your pride above their pain. A true story. And how I learned the power of silence. I once had a friend who was passionate about entrepreneurship. He had a bold idea, Open a secondhand bookstore cafe in the middle of the digital age. I tried to talk him out of it. That concept's outdated. Who even reads paper books anymore? Nowadays, it's all about apps and e-commerce. He didn't listen. He went ahead. And a few months later, the store shut down. I wanted to say, "See? I told you so." But I looked into his disappointed eyes and held my tongue. Instead, I sat down and asked, "So, what's your next move?" "I still believe you'll create something even greater after this lesson." And guess what? A year later, he opened a new space, still with old books, but this time including art workshops, acoustic nights, and community events. And it's been thriving ever since. When someone fails, they've already blamed themselves 10 times more. Here's a hard truth. When someone fails, they don't need a reminder of their mistake. They're already living it. What they don't need to hear is, "I told you so." What they do need is someone who will stand beside them and help them look forward. A better way to say the same thing, without hurting. Instead of, "I warned you, but you didn't listen." Try. "Things didn't go as planned. What did you learn from this?" Or, "If you could do it again, what would you do differently?" These kinds of questions don't blame or judge. They invite reflection and growth. A lesson for all of us. Those who were right, but spoke the wrong way. Sometimes, being factually right isn't as important as being emotionally wise. Remember, friendship isn't built on being more correct. Family bonds aren't strengthened by being right when someone's already on the ground. 3. Why haven't you achieved anything yet? When expectations become invisible wounds, in every gathering among familiar faces, longtime friends, siblings, or old classmates, there's always a moment of checking in. But sometimes, what seems like a harmless question can strangle someone's self-worth. So, what are you doing now? Still haven't started your career? Look at how many people are rich already. Why are you still going nowhere? What we often don't realize is, these questions, when said at the wrong moment, strike the very wounds someone is already quietly bleeding from. Not everyone is waiting for you to judge their life. Some people have just lost their jobs. Some are going through a divorce. Some are drowning in debt and putting on a brave face just to make it through a gathering without falling apart. And then, one offhand remark, one playful tease, can cause them to completely break down inside. Not because you were cruel, but because you weren't paying attention. A real story from a hometown visit. The invisible slap in a crowded room I once returned to my hometown for a reunion. There was a guy there, let's call him T, who had been the top student in our middle school, the pride of our poor neighborhood. But that day, he sat quietly in the corner. He looked worn down. His eyes avoided everyone. Then another friend, without thinking, blurted out loudly, "What? T still hasn't done anything impressive yet? You were the smartest one? Still aimless?" The whole table burst into laughter. Except me. I saw T's eyes go dark. A few minutes later, he stood up, walked outside, and never came back. Later, I found out. T had just gone bankrupt after a failed investment. He owed the bank, his wife had left, and his child was now living with his mother. That one joking sentence may have been the final nail in the heart of someone already falling apart inside. We often judge others' lives by our own measuring stick, and that's dangerous. No one has the right to look at one moment of someone's life and define their entire story. You don't know who they've helped, what they've endured, or how hard they're fighting behind the scenes. Most importantly, you don't live their life. So don't cause them pain just to satisfy your curiosity or inflate your own sense of success. Instead of asking, Why haven't you done anything? Try this. How have you been lately? Is there anything I can help with? I still believe you've got something big ahead. Maybe the timing just hasn't come yet. These words don't force someone to defend themselves. They give them a reason to keep going. The lesson: be careful with casual questions. Some are polite in tone but sharp as knives. Everyone is fighting an inner battle you can't see. So if you're unsure whether your words will help or hurt, choose kind silence. 4. Have you gained weight lately? When careless teasing becomes a burden of insecurity, it might sound simple, even lighthearted to some. For many, it's just a way to break the ice or make conversation. But in reality, comments about appearance, especially weight, are among the most sensitive and easily hurtful topics, even if the person on the receiving end doesn't show it outwardly. I once saw a confident girl shrink into silence over one careless joke. At a reunion years after graduation, I watched a once energetic and confident friend fall silent and withdrawn for the rest of the gathering. Why? Because someone at the table jokingly blurted out, "Wow, you used to be so slim. What happened? You've really bulked up." What none of us knew was this: she had just gone through a severe episode of depression. The medication had caused rapid weight gain. She had been fighting daily to stay afloat, and that day she just wanted a lighthearted, happy meetup. Not scrutiny. Weight and appearance aren't always under someone's control. Some gain weight due to illness. Some change physically after childbirth, under stress, or because they're simply trying to survive the daily grind of life. And sometimes, it's the harmless comments that make them retreat, lose confidence, and feel unworthy, especially in the eyes of someone familiar. If you truly care, ask this instead. How have you been lately? Are you doing okay? Don't ask, why have you gained so much weight? Because kindness starts with choosing your words carefully, and sometimes love is as simple as staying silent about things that don't need to be said. 5. When are you getting married? A simple question that can touch the deepest wounds. This is one of the most frequently asked questions at parties, reunions, weddings, or during the holidays. Some say it's a sign of care. Some insist it's harmless. But the truth? Not quite. Being single doesn't mean someone doesn't want love or doesn't dream of marriage. Maybe they once loved deeply, or even engaged, and then had their heart broken. Maybe they stopped after too many betrayals. Or perhaps they just haven't met someone they truly feel safe with. I'll never forget a moment from a class reunion. A beautiful, successful woman in her 30s was constantly teased about still being unmarried. She smiled through it all, gracefully brushing it off. But later that night, she texted me, "I'm tired. I was supposed to get married. But he left right before our pre-wedding photos. I don't blame them, but it still hurts." We never really know what someone has been through. Even well-meaning questions can press on wounds that haven't fully healed. And sometimes, people choose to be alone, not out of loneliness, but out of self-love. They're learning to love themselves first. Marriage isn't the yardstick for success or happiness. We must learn to respect other people's choices the way we want our own to be respected. So instead of asking, "Why aren't you married yet?" try, "Are you happy these days?" Because real happiness doesn't come from having someone next to you. It comes from finding peace within yourself. 6. You must have it so easy. A comment that sounds like praise but can deeply hurt. People often say this casually when they see someone who appears well put together, has a stable job, or is smiling brightly. But what they don't see is that behind that smile might be days of depression, sleepless nights, or silent breakdowns no one knew about. You see someone who has it easy. but you don't see the moments they had to force themselves to be strong. You see success, but not the quiet sacrifices that came with it. That one sentence, "You must be living the good life," can feel like it erases all the effort, pain, and resilience behind the scenes. Instead of judging or comparing, try to see with empathy, because sometimes the ones who seem to have it all are the ones feeling most alone. And what they need isn't your envy, but your understanding. Verse 7. You should do this. You have to do that. When advice turns into pressure, we often believe that giving advice is a way of helping, that offering suggestions means we care. So in conversations with people we're close to, we tend to say things like, "You should go out more. You have to be stronger. Don't be so negative. Just think positive." It sounds helpful. It feels supportive. But in many cases, these words become an invisible pressure, making the listener feel inadequate, wrong, or unworthy of their own emotions. When someone's pain gets buried under positive vibes only, you don't know how hard they fought just to get out of bed that morning. You don't know the battles they wrestled with in silence the night before. And now, instead of feeling seen or heard, they're being told to be strong, to snap out of it. Advice without deep listening often becomes a cold command. You're not helping them heal. You're making them feel guilty for not being who you think they should be.